A good day to you, great group of learners. Welcome to our economics discussion, economics paper 2 in preparation for the junior examinations. It is my understanding and it is my belief that you are preparing for the junior examinations, and I'm going to take you through paper 2 sample paper discussion. As we are going through the paper, we're going to show you how best you can respond to the given questions, and also to try to elaborate on some aspects that you need to have at your disposal for the sake of the interest of the examinations. So without wasting much time, I will take you to the questions and we do the discussion. Right. Our first part is the section A, which has 3 subsections, which is section 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3. And our 1.1, we understand it's a section of multiple choice questions where we are given a set of responses and we are supposed to pick the correct response from the possible options provided. Right, our first question, number 1.1.1, it says here, products that are similar in appearance, taste, and touch are known as. We are looking at products that are similar in appearance, in taste, and in touch. Those products in economics, we call them homogeneous products. They are homogeneous products. Right. If you look at differentiated products, we are looking at products that are differentiated by means of packaging or by means of labeling. The basic products is the same, but they are differentiated using either packaging or using branding. Right. Then if you look at heterogeneous, we are saying heterogeneous, they are completely different. And if you're looking at a unique product is mainly for the monopoly. A monopoly produces a unique product. We are saying it's a special product that does not have close substitutes. Right. We move to question number 1.1.2. It talks about the marginal revenue curve of a monopoly and the average revenue. Comparison of the two, if you still remember, when we are drawing our revenue curves, we said that this is our vertical axis to represent the price or the cost, and this is our horizontal axis for the quantity. Right. So this is price or cost. So our graphs, they look downward sloping, both of them. And we understand that our average revenue stands there is equal to the demand curve, and then our marginal revenue is always there. So if you are looking at the relationship of these two at a particular quantity, let's say we are looking at them at quantity Q, we see that our marginal revenue is there and our average revenue is there. So your marginal revenue is always below the average revenue or the demand curve. So it's C. Right. Then we move on to the next question. Our next question is saying private costs plus external costs. Private cost plus the external cost of a construction site are called. We are looking at the private cost, which are the direct cost, plus the cost to society, right? That are what we call the social costs, right? When a business has more power to change the market price by changing the quantity supplied in the market, it means it has. What does it have? It has the power to change the market price by changing the quantity. Like what the monopoly does, it can manipulate the price by reducing quantity. It creates an artificial shortage, right, so that it can raise the price. So it has market power. If you have market power, you can manipulate the price because you have the capability of changing what is happening on the market. You change your quantity so that you create a shortage and the price goes up. Right, number 115. A market structure that has a few large businesses that dominate the market is called. Our key is few, but at the same time they are large. What industry can we figure out in South Africa which has got few and large businesses? For example, You can look at the network providers. You can look at the banks. They are just a few, but they are very big businesses. Those businesses, they fall under the classification of oligopolies. So it's an oligopoly. Right. Number 116, it says the dash is a graph that shows different combination of two goods that provide a consumer with the same level of satisfaction. When you are considering satisfaction and you are looking at a combination of two goods that yield the same level of satisfaction, we are looking at the indifference curve. I understand you know indifference analysis, where we are comparing the utility that is derived from a particular product and the utility from another product versus the price on the budget line. It gives us two combinations with the same yield of satisfaction or utility. Right. We move on to number 117. The shutdown point is where there. Where do we find the shutdown point? Right, our shutdown point is found at A, at B, where the average revenue is equal to average variable cost. The average revenue is equal to the average variable cost. A business, if it fails to cover its average variable cost, it means that business is going to close. For a business to sustain or to keep surviving in the short run, it must be able to cover the average variable cost. So the average revenue must be equal to the average variable cost. So we disregard the average fixed cost in the short run because a business can sustain until it is supposed to account for the fixed cost. So we are looking at a particular point whenever the business fails to cover for the average variable costs, which are the operational costs, that business is going to close. That's the shutdown point. Right, we look at the next question, number 118. It says, dash exists when there are legal barriers that make it difficult to establish a business in a certain industry. We are looking at legal barriers here. For example, we have a patent right that gives us an artificial monopoly. Right. A state-owned monopoly, are saying the business is owned by the state and is protected. Like, for example, strategic key sectors of the economy must be controlled by the state, and they cannot allow private enterprises to take charge of a critical resource for the nation. A natural monopoly, are looking at a monopoly which comes out as a result of a control of a critical natural resource. Then we have a local monopoly. We are looking at localized monopolies. You have monopoly over a limited geographical space. Then artificial is the one that is answering our question. Right, that takes us to the end of our first part, which is question number 1.1. We move on to the next section, which is number 1.2. Number 1.2 is a matching column question. We are supposed to match a description in column B with a corresponding item or term in column A. Right, we look at externality. When we are looking at externalities in production, we are looking at it from the perspective of the costs or the benefit that accrue to the society. A society, in this term, we are relating to the fact that as a business operates as a private entity, it poses some positive benefits to the society in which it operates around. For example, job creation. It is now able to offer employment opportunities for the society. It's an external benefit, which is a benefit to society. Or infrastructural development. It's a benefit to society. That is an externality. Or it can also pose costs to society. For example, if a business is operating in a society, it causes pollution in the form of air or in the form of noise. The people around, they are going to suffer. It's an externality. So it's actually, it can be a benefit, which is a positive externality, or can be a cost, which is a negative externality, but it is not affecting the business in question, but is affecting the society, which is a third part. So in this instance, our correct response to externality is item I, which says cost or benefit that spill over to the third party. Then we move to the next question, number 122. It says restrictive trade practices. When we are looking at restrictive trade practices, we are looking at something related to item F. Our item F is saying practices that interfere with the perfect market. For example, price fixing. We are restricting the market free operational conditions of the market. We are imposing conditions that restrict the free working of the market through interaction of more forces of demand and supply. Then we also look at a cartel. We know a cartel, that is when businesses come together so that they can work and act as a monopoly. They make a combined effort to come together, to join, so that they can be able to have the power to manipulate what happens on the market. So our right response for a cartel is B, where businesses come together with the aim of forming a collective monopoly. Right. We have a sin tax. We understand sin taxes. Those are taxes that are imposed on harmful products. Products like tobacco, products like alcohol, they are not desirable in society. We call them demerit goods. Goods which are not socially desirable. So for the government to discourage their consumption, they charge a sin tax so that the price of those commodities goes higher and they become unaffordable to everyone, so that the consumption is reduced. And also it's a way of raising money or revenue for the government through those taxes. So a sin tax, we can say, that is a tax charged on demerit goods, which is A. Diseconomies of scale, those are the disadvantages of size. If the business gets too big, it will now have an increase in the cost of production. It will experience a rising average cost. Right. So the corresponding response is diseconomies of scale matches with an increase in the production cost due to inefficient production, which is C. Then sunk costs. When we're talking of sunk costs, we are looking at irrecoverable costs, costs that cannot be covered up for. Right. So sunk costs matches with item E, which says costs that cannot be retrieved. For example, advertising. Then we have a progressive tax system. We understand that a progressive tax system is the typical tax regime for South Africa, whereby given income levels belong to given different tax brackets, with the lower level income having a tax bracket which is also having a lower percentage, and with a higher income also belonging to a higher percentage tax bracket that is progressive. The higher you earn, the more you pay. So progressive tax, it matches with a tax system where low income pay less tax, which is D. Then we have the short run period. When we are looking at the short run period, we are looking at the period in production where factors of production, at least we have one which is fixed there. At least one factor of production is fixed. That is the short run. It means we cannot change at least one of our factors of production. Maybe, for example, we cannot alter our capital. If we can't change our capital, it means we are still in the long run. But when we get in the short run, we no longer talk of fixed elements of production. Everything can be changed in the long run. Everything becomes variable. So whenever we can't change a factor of production in the we are still in the short run. At least one. If there is any factor that cannot be changed, we are in the short run. And the short run is not a specific period. It depends with an industry or a business. It ranges or it varies from one business to another, from one industry to another. Right. So a short run matches with item G, which says a period at which at least one factor of production is fixed. Right. That takes us to the end of question 1.2. We move on to question 1.3. Give one term in each of the following descriptions. Write only the term next to the question number. We want to find a term that matches with the corresponding description. Opportunity costs to the owners of the firm for using the factors of production. An opportunity cost to the owners of the firms for using the factors of production. That is what we call an implicit cost in economics. Implicit cost. Then public goods and services that are provided by the government, which are free for everyone. The concept of free for everyone guides us to community goods. A group of business that produce goods that are the same. A specific set of goods which are produced by a number of businesses, that's an industry. Then we look at property right that gives an inventor the exclusive right to use or sell their invention for a set period of time. That's a patent right. Then we also look at a systematic process of calculating and comparing the benefits and costs of a project. We are talking of the benefits and the costs, which imply that you are looking at a cost, benefit analysis. Right. That comes to number 1.3.6, when two or more firms come together to form one company. Two or more come together, we are saying they are merging. It's a merger. Right, that is our first section of our paper. We now move on to the second section, which is our section B, microeconomics. Right. The first question is saying, list two barriers or to entry that are used by monopolies. We are saying, how do monopolies restrict the entry into the market by other new participants who might want to join the specific industry? They can rely on government licenses. For example, the government can protect its state-owned entities through licensing. They do not issue those licenses to private entities who might want to join the industry. Or we can look at it from the perspective of the patent rights, where exclusive rights are given to a given business. So patents can also be used. They can also use copyrights, where you cannot imitate a specific product because it's copyrighted. And also, monopolies can have an advantage that new businesses cannot cater for the high setup costs. The startup costs, usually they are high. For example, why ESCOM is not challenged by other private entities is because to set up a national grid for electricity, that costs billions of rands. So there's no specific business which is willing to invest such large sums of money, or it is not readily available for private entities to have such huge amounts of money, or to set up a power station. That is a very expensive encounter. And it implies that ESCOM will still dominate because of it having attained to set up its production factories which cater for such high costs, and any new entry will be restricted because of the high startup costs. Right. Why is the demand curve of a perfect market horizontal? We are saying a perfect market's demand curve is horizontal. The price and the quantity. At this particular price, the demand curve is horizontal. Why is it horizontal? Right, what you must understand here is the businesses are price takers. Firms under perfect market conditions are price takers. They can sell an infinite quantity. The price is determined by the market force of demand and supply. That is why we're saying they are price takers. they don't have the power to set the price. So they charge a price which is determined by the market forces. So it means the price which is determined is at P, and they can sell an infinite quantity at the market price. Meaning to say, a business can sell as much as they can at that particular price, because the price comes from the market force of demand and supply. Then you have to accept, the business have to accept the industry price, which has been set by the total aggregate demand of the market and the aggregate supply that they are able to. And hence, they cannot charge a price higher. Any price higher or any price lower than the market price gives zero revenue. Right. Then we move on to question 2.2. 2.2 is a cost schedule, which has got an output, price, fixed, variable, and total costs. Right. By merely looking at it, you can see, identify the market structure presented in the table. For us to be able to see the market structure, we check on the price. If you see there, the price is maintained at 50, which suggests that the price is fixed. And for that sake, we are saying if a business produces 1 unit of output, they sell it at 30. If they produce 2 at 50, they will still sell it at 50. Produce 3, 4, they were still selling it at 50. So it gives us the implication that the price remains the same. So what kind of market is that? It's a perfect market. If it was an imperfect, we will see manipulations on the price. Or we can say it's perfect competition. Right, name the cost that remains constant regardless of the amount of output. We can see this is 30, 30, 30 throughout. So our fixed costs. Right, briefly describe the term variable costs. We are saying these are costs that change directly with the level of production. What are we saying? We're saying these costs, they change directly, which means the more you produce, the more you pay. For example, we talk about water, talk about electricity. Those are variable costs. The more you use water, the more you pay for water. The more you use electricity, the more you pay for electricity. So those are variable. They change directly with the level of production. Then explain why businesses in this market are price takers. Why businesses in this market are price takers. Right. Price is determined by the industry. Which means no one business has got the power to change its price. Price is determined by the industry, which means the total of demand and supply forces of the market. So no one business has got the power to change the price, because the price is determined by the industry. For that sake, they are price takers. They accept the ruling price, which comes from the interaction of the forces of demand and supply. Then our next question is saying, calculate the cost for the third, marginal cost for the third output. Show all calculations. When we're looking at marginal cost, for the sake of clarity, we are saying it's additional cost of producing one more extra unit. So when you're calculating your marginal cost, we can use the formula change in total cost. We divide the change in total cost by the change in total output. So the change in total cost divided by the change in output, it gives us the marginal cost, which is the additional cost. Or in other words, we can use this formula here. We're saying TCN minus TCN minus 1. But we can only use this where our variance in output is equal to 1. We use TCN minus 1, which is total cost of production of n units minus the total cost of production of n minus 1 units. But our variance of output must be 1. Right, let's start by using change in total cost over change in output. Right, we want to find for the third output, for output number 3. Right, so for the third output, we come to our table. We want to find the marginal cost for the third output. Right, so we are saying for the total cost here, our third output, we are saying this is the first, the second, and the third. We want to find marginal cost for this unit here. So our change in total cost is going to be 68 minus 55. So it's change in total cost, it's 68 minus 55. And we divide this by change in output, which is our output at third is 3 units, and our output to the prior is 2 units. So it's 3 minus 2. So what are we going to get there? This is going to give us 68 minus 55 is going to give us 13. And we divide by 3 minus 2 is going to give us 1. So our marginal cost is going to be 13. Or simply getting back to TCN minus 1, we are saying our variance here in output is 1 because our total output is changing by 1 from 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. Our variance is equal to 1. So we can simply say our total output is TCN. We are saying total costs. We want the third unit. For the third unit, we are saying is total cost of producing 3 units minus total cost of producing 3 minus 2 units, 3 minus 1 units. So it's TCN minus 1. Our N is 3. 3 minus 1, we are saying is total cost of producing 3 units minus total cost of producing 3 minus 1 units, which is 2. So we come here to our total cost. The total cost of producing 3 units is 68. Total cost of producing 2 units is 55. So it's simply 68 minus 55. That is going to give us 13. Right. That is what you can also use, but you can only use this when the variance in output is equal to 1. If it's not equal to 1, you cannot use that formula. Right, that takes us to the end of question 2.2. Move on to 2.3. Right, start the logos below and answer the questions that follow. We are seeing those logos that are there. Then the question says, identify the market depicted above. What kind of a market is that? That is basically an imperfect market. The market is imperfect. Name the industry that is represented above. Name the industry. That is basically a retail industry. They are retailers. Briefly describe the term product differentiation. But we're talking about differentiation. We are saying products in the market are distinguished from similar products to make them more attractive to the customer. So basically, when we're differentiating products, when we're doing product differentiation, we are trying to distinguish products. The products are similar, but we try to create a difference so that they become attractive. So what can we do to create the distinguish, to have a distinguishing image? We can use branding, we use specific logos, we use specific labeling, or we can use specific packaging. But basically the products are similar, but we want to differentiate them. We want to show a difference amongst them by labeling them, by branding them, by packaging them differently. That is a product differentiation. Explain how businesses in this market structure differentiate their products. How do businesses in this market differentiate their products? I think I've just answered the question earlier on. They do branding, use of specific signs and logos and labels, and also they differentiate through different packaging. Right. How do businesses in this market structure compete? We are looking at the competition strategies that are adopted by imperfect markets. Right. What they can do there, they use what we call non-price competition. That is the basic thing that you must know. They use non-price competing strategies. Why? Because, for example, in oligopolies, they are faced with the king demand curve, which means it's not possible for one business to change its price without considering the action that is going to be taken by the fellow participants in the same industry. If a business raises its prices in an oligopoly, it risks the chance of losing more revenue than what it expects. A slight increase in the price leads to a very big loss in revenue. And at the same time, if the business tries to gain more customers by reducing the price, the same is going to happen. It's again going to lose revenue. Why? Because the change in price does not compensate for the increase in the number of customers who are going to buy the product. You increase your product by a bigger margin, but only few additional customers are going to buy your product, which means still there is a loss in revenue. So they have to rely on using other strategies which does not involve the use of the price or which does not involve manipulation of the price. We cannot change the price. So we rely on non-price competing strategies. Right, what are those strategies? We can look at they use advertisement to give information and to increase awareness and also to attract. Remember, we have informative advertisement, we have persuasive advertisements. They use all those different forms of advertisement to attract customers, which is non-price, or they can also use the internet, doing business over the internet. You can buy and pay over the internet. It's also another strategy which makes it convenient for the customers. So online shopping is a convenient way which they can use to compete with others, or they can use door-to-door services, deliveries. They issue deliveries, which is also another benefit, or they can also use brand loyalty. Brand loyalty, they can give rewards to their customers so that they become loyal to the given brand and they become committed as customers to that specific brand and not to other brands. Those are some of the methods that they can use to try and compete without using the price or without changing the price. Right. With an aid of a graph, explain how profit is maximized in the perfect market using total costs and total revenue. Right. What is going to happen here? We are going to answer question 2.4. Right. We are going to look at the graph which explains how profit is maximized under perfect market using the total costs and using the total revenue. So our graph is going to look like this. This is our vertical axis, right? And this is our horizontal axis for our quantity, right? So we have our costs or we have our revenue, and then on the horizontal axis we will have our quantity. What is going to happen here is our total revenue, remember, is made up of fixed costs and variable costs. So our total revenue will start from the origin, which means it's positively sloped starting from the origin. That is our total revenue, which is made up of, our total costs in this instance. We have total costs. Our fixed costs, they can be realized at zero production. That is why our total costs start from the origin, because even at zero production, you are supposed to pay for fixed costs. So our total cost, we are saying, is made up of the fixed element plus the variable element. Right. Then we look at our revenue curve. In this instance, we are saying our total revenue. Then we look at our revenue curve, or our, in this instance, we are saying this is our total total revenue as it's suggested by the vertically sloping line, as we can see there. And we are saying our total costs, we have it there. Right, our revenue will our cost will increase and it will go slightly up like that to give us a total cost like that. Let's assume we are going to add some figures just for the sake of illustration to make it more practical. Right, for those 3 points, right, we are saying for these 3 points, what is going to happen there? Our total revenue, you can see it's positively sloped and it's starting at origin, because if there's no production, there's no revenue, and our total cost will start slightly up because we will still have to pay costs at even zero production at the origin here. And for that reason, we are saying our total cost and total revenue, they are equal at this particular point. We say this point is A, and let's say again they are intersecting at point B. So if we are to use figures, maybe we can put our 85 output, we can also put maybe our 100, and maybe we can put our output at 120. Right, so where do we maximize profit? The maximum point of profit is where our total revenue is bigger than the total cost by a bigger margin. The difference between the total costs and the total revenue there, with total revenue being higher, must be the widest part of differences at a given level of output. So if we look at those two, we are saying at 85, it's a break-even point, total revenue is equal to total costs. And as we progress to increase our output, if we go to 100, we are seeing this particular point here in terms of the gap between the total revenue and the total costs. That is where our profit is maximized. Profit maximization, it happens here. where there is the widest part of the difference between the total revenue and the total cost. And if we come here again, you will see that at this particular point, there is now zero profit. Our total revenue at 120 is equal to total costs, which means again, the business is breaking even, is getting a zero profit. So profit is maximized at 100 units of production, at quantity 100. That is where our gap between the total revenue and the total cost is widest. Right. That is basically what you need to explain there on the diagram. Then question 2.5, it says, with reference to the King demand curve, analyze the rationale behind the demand curve. Right. The rationale behind the demand curve, I'll explain the issue of the King demand curve so that you can get to understand the sense behind the King demand curve. Right. Our King demand curve, we are saying it looks like this in question. This is our question number 2.5. We are relating to the King demand curve. Right, number 2.5. Our King demand curve looks like this. Right. This is our price, and this is our quantity. Right, and this is our origin 0. We are saying our demand curve is relatively elastic. It reaches a kink, and then it becomes inelastic. That is the kinked demand curve. Right. So this demand curve here, what we can say, point that must note is the kinked demand curve does not explain how the price and output are determined. Does not explain how the price and quantity are determined. Under the oligopolistic industries. But what does it illustrate? It illustrates the importance of interdependence. It highlights the significance of interdependence of firms in that specific industry. How firms in the specific industry must interdepend. And uncertainty. There is also an element of uncertainty in the market. So with that perception of uncertainty and interdependence, what you're saying here, we are saying, I will make the illustration there to show how interdependence comes to play. We do not know, this graph does not explain to us where the price and the quantity comes from. But we understand from the essence of the demand curve that if this is point A at the kink, this is the quantity, the market clearing quantity that each business must produce, and they must sell it at the price P as suggested by the kink of the demand curve. Now let's look at the significance of interdependence. If one business tries to manipulate the price and does not consider the actions of others, it is going to suffer. Right, what is going to happen? Let's say a business tries to increase its price from P to P1. Look at what is going to happen to the quantity. The quantity is going to fall by half at Q1. If you are to add figures, let's say this is 100 and this is 200. Automatically, this is half, it becomes 100. So this can be 120. You see what is happening? What was the revenue at point Q? We are saying the business is able to charge a price of 100 Rand and be able to sell 200 units of the product. So it means your revenue is going to be 200 units times 100 rand per unit, which is going to give that business 20,000 revenue at this particular point. But look at what is going to happen if the business tries to increase its price from 100 to 120. It is going to lose a considerable number of customers. So it's now selling 100 units at 120, which is going to give this business 12,000. You see? So we are saying this business has lost revenue. It was gaining 20,000 by selling at a price 100. But the moment it raises its price, now it's getting 12,000 revenue. So it's a loss of revenue of 8,000. And then let's look at also if the business tries to reduce its price. Maybe the business feels like if it can reduce its price, it is going to gain more customers. Right. Let's say it reduces the price by half. It is able to reduce the price by half. You see what is going to happen there. Right. So what is happening here is this business has decided to reduce the price to P2, and its quantity now is now Q2. Using a hypothetical illustration of figures, we can say this price is 50, which is half of 100. And if we look at this increase in quantity, comparably, looking at this is slightly less than half of this. So if this is 100 to 200, it means somewhere there is 50. But this one, we can say, yes, it's 250. Let's assume for the sake of our illustration. So if the business is now gaining additional 50 customers by reducing the price by half, we are seeing the trend there that it is of no benefit for that particular business. Right. So if you are saying this is 250, what is our total revenue at this particular point if the business decides to operate here? It means now this business is now selling 250 units, but they are now selling them at a price of 50. What are they going to get? They're going to get 12,500. So you see this revenue compared to this. So it means there is no benefit for one business to try to manipulate its price so as to benefit from the market, because there is no benefit that the business can realize if other businesses in the same industry do not follow the trend. You increase your price at your own discretion and other businesses maintain their price. If you increase a price by a smaller margin, like what is illustrated here, from 100 to 120, you are going to lose a very big customer base. Because these products, remember, they are similar, but they are only differentiated. If, for example, it's network providers, basically the network is basically the same. And basically what differs there are the charges. If you try to increase your prices, customers will shift to other network providers. Let's say, for example, it's Vodacom and Telkom. Vodacom increases its price in an effort to try to regain more revenue. It loses more customers, and those customers will go to other suppliers who have not changed their prices. So as a result, a smaller increase in the price will result into a very bigger loss in quantity sold. And as a result, the total revenue is going to fall. And if you try to increase your price, you try to increase your revenue by lowering the price, you might think that you will gain more customers if you sell a product at a cheaper price. But remember, the problem here is we have loyal customers to some specific brands. They are loyal customers who cannot change their taste because of price. They are satisfied with the brand and they are totally committed to their brands. Those customers are not going to shift their expenditure to the cheaper option. You can only gain very few customers by lowering your price, like what is illustrated by the change in price from 100 to 50. The change in quantity is only a small change. which is from 200 to 250. And as a result, there is again loss of revenue. That is basically how a kinked demand curve works. Right. So there's interdependence there. If there is no interdependence there, it means any business which tries to change its price without considering the actions of the others, it is going to lose revenue. And also the issue of uncertainty. You don't know how others are going to react. If you try to do your own decision without knowing the action to be taken by other businesses in the same industry, that is going to pose a negative implication on the particular business. Right, that was question number 2.5. And that takes us to the end of question number 2. We move on to question number 3. Question number 3, the first question is saying, name two institutions of competition policy. Right, under competition policy of South Africa, we have the Competition Commission. That's number 1. Then we have the Competition Tribunal. And then lastly, we have the Competition Appeal Courts. Right. Then the next question says, why are businesses in the car industry dependent on each other? Why are they dependent on each other? Right. They are dependent on each other because a decision taken by one business depends on the decisions taken by other businesses in the industry. Taken by other businesses in the industry. So we are saying the decision that is taken by one business, it depends on the decision that is taken by other businesses in the industry. You cannot make your own decision. You have to depend on the decisions of others. Like if one business decreases their price, others must also follow the trend. That is the interdependence. Right, will syntaxes rise? That is question 3.2. It's an extract of syntaxes. Name the type of text charged above. It is automatically talking to us about a syntax. Who is mostly affected by an increase in the above text? Right, if you check in your extract, you tend to find a clue of the groups of people who are affected by the syntax. We are looking at those who are marginalized, the marginalized ones, the marginalized groups. And also we are looking at those who are not economically empowered. Right, briefly describe the term excise duty. We are talking of an excise duty. We are looking at a tax imposed on certain luxury items. You can talk of e.g. alcohol so as to discourage their consumption. Discourage their consumption. So we are looking at those goods which are luxurious and a tax is imposed on them. That is an excise duty so that we discourage the consumption of those goods. What is the reason for charging the above mentioned tax? We have already answered the question. To discourage consumption. We want to reduce the consumption of those goods. Right. Or we can also say that it's a way of raising revenue for the government. Because remember, products like alcohol and cigarettes, those are habit-forming goods. And as a result, people who consume them, they can hardly do without them. They will sacrifice to try and find an income to purchase them. So it's also a guaranteed way of the government to raise a revenue. Why are excise duties a good source of income for government? They are a good source of income for government. For what reason? I've just answered given one of the reasons. Right. They are habit forming, they are charged. On habit forming goods. Or can say goods that have addiction. And hence, the consumers cannot do without them. Consumers will sacrifice to purchase them. So it's a good source of revenue because we know well that even if the price is high, we charge a higher tax, the consumers will still sacrifice to buy them. And hence, we are guaranteed that the government is going to get revenue. And also because of them being addictive and habit forming, we understand by relating to the concept of the elasticity, we are saying even if the price goes up, the quantity will reduce by a small margin. They have got relatively inelastic demand, which means even if the price changes by a bigger margin, the quantity demanded will drop by a smaller margin, a smaller percentage. There is a less than proportionate change in quantity demanded to a corresponding change in price for habit-forming goods. So for that sake, we are saying the government is able to raise revenue by increasing the amount of tax. So we are saying government can increase its revenue by charging a higher percentage. Right. Those can be the possible responses to the question. Let's go to the next question. Number 3.3 is a graph which shows the relationship between marginal cost and average cost and also the revenue curves of an imperfect market. Identify the marginal cost curve in the above graph. Identify the marginal cost curve in the above graph. Right. So if you look at our cost and revenue curves, we can actually see our marginal cost curve is indicated there, but the labels, they are not indicated. Unfortunately, we're supposed to have labels to show or to give as a suggestion to our curves. But unfortunately, our marginal cost, we can see that our marginal cost is indicated here. Our marginal cost is like a tick. Like our marginal cost looks like a tick or a Nike shape. That is how our marginal cost look like. And our average cost, we always know it's a U shape. And also our revenue curves are downward sloping with the average revenue always above the marginal revenue. That is typical of an imperfect market. Name the type of product sold in the market structure above. Name the type of product. This is typical of a monopoly. A monopoly sells unique products. products that do not have substitute, do not have close substitute. Right, that's a unique product. For example, Eskom sells electricity. We cannot perfectly substitute electricity. Briefly describe the term monopoly. When I define a monopoly, mono means one. So it's a market structure when there is only one business that sells a unique product. Business selling a unique product. That's a monopoly. Why does the marginal revenue curve lie below the demand curve? Right, for a monopoly, why is it that additional revenue is always below the average revenue or the price? The price that we sell at for a specific quantity of products is always higher than the additional revenue that we get if we try to increase our level of sales. Why is that so? Right, we are saying this because the monopoly or the business have to reduce their price in order to sell an additional unit. The business has to reduce the price for them to sell additional units. That is why the change in total revenue will become lower, because for you to sell an additional unit, you are reducing the price. So by reducing the price, it means the marginal revenue or the additional revenue is going to get lower compared to the price that you are selling for that particular product. That is why we have the marginal revenue curve below the average revenue for a monopoly. Use the information from the graph above to calculate profit or loss. Profit or loss. For us to determine the profit or the loss, what do we do there? We are going to look at our two curves and be able to figure out where our profit or loss is. But from the look of things, we can see that in this graph, our average cost is above average revenue. I understand you know, or maybe for clarity, the equilibrium positions for a profit-making imperfect business and for a loss-making. If a business average cost and average revenue, we are seeing here, like this is our marginal revenue, and this is our average revenue, which is the equivalent to the demand curve. We are saying this is our quantity, and this is our revenue cost or the price on this side. Right. So what we see here is if we have our average cost somewhere here, it does not touch the average revenue, and we have our marginal cost cutting the average cost at its lowest point, like that. The situation here is our quantity is determined by the marginal cost and the marginal revenue. Our equilibrium point is here, where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. So we get our quantity here, and we continue with the axis until we get to the cost. So it means if you check here, our average cost is here. And if you check along our demand curve, our price, which is our average revenue, is here. So we see this gap here. Average cost is above average revenue. Automatically, it means there is a loss here. But if you see a situation like this, this is your revenue or cost or the price axis, and the horizontal axis is there to indicate for us the quantity. We have our quantity on the horizontal axis. What is going to happen if we have our marginal revenue there and we have our average revenue, which is the equivalent of the demand curve, and we see our average cost dipping below the average revenue, and we see our marginal cost again cutting the average cost at its lowest. We are seeing here our equilibrium is here, where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. We continue and proceed with our line until we get to our average revenue. We see our average revenue is there, or our price is there. Where is our cost? Our cost is here. So we are seeing that our average revenue is above the average cost. If the AC is dipping below the average revenue, so this shaded region is going to be indicating our profit. So by merely looking at this, we can see that our illustration is portraying the first graph here. It's portraying something like here on the first graph. So automatically we must get a negative value to show that there is a loss being experienced in this particular area here, because our average cost curve, we can see that it's above the average revenue curve. So coming back to our illustration there, we need to pick our quantity here. We said our equilibrium is here, which means our quantity is 100. And what is our revenue? Our revenue is 150. And what is our cost? Is 200. So when we are doing our calculations, we are saying our profit, we are saying we need to calculate it by saying total revenue minus a total cost. So our total revenue, we are saying it's 100 units which are sold at a price of 150. We subtract the same quantity, 100 is being produced at a cost of 200 per unit. So we are seeing the disparity there. This side gives us 15000 less 20000. 15 minus 20, which gives us a negative 5000. So this is our profit or loss. In this instance, it's a loss. It's a negative 5000, which implies that this business is making a loss because we have a negative sign there. Our total revenue is less than our total costs. Right. We move on to question 3.4. Question 3.4 says, briefly discuss the aims of the Competition Act of 1998 and why is cost-benefit analysis necessary for public sector projects. Right, we are going to use our space to answer those questions. Question 3.4. Right, this is question 3.4. Question is saying, discuss the aims of the Competition Act. Right. Number one is to prevent abuse of economic power. Abuse the use of economic power, for example, by monopolists. A monopolist business can abuse its power by manipulating the market conditions. Or is there also to regulate the growth of market power? Regulating the growth of market power, for example, through takeovers or mergers, they have to be regulated so that they don't come to a position of manipulating the market. And also it is there to prevent restrictive practices, especially price fixing by oligopolies. And also it's there to improve efficiency of the market. Is there to make sure that the market is efficient. Perfect conditions are maintained for the sake of the efficiency of the market. or can safely say to protect consumers against unfair prices or against inferior goods. Yeah, that's basically the Competition Act of 1998. Then number 3.5 is saying, why is CBA necessary for public sector projects? Why is CBA a necessity for public sector projects? Right, number one is that it leads to objective decision making. It leads to an objective decision making because it weighs up the cost and the benefit. So we end up having an objective decision. And then we can also say it includes the wider social impact and externalities. We cannot afford to ignore the impacts on society or externalities to the society. So when we are making our decisions, we need to take care of the third-party effects. We need to consider them when we're making decisions. Instead of us prioritizing private benefit, we also need to consider the social benefits. So in decision-making, we need to take care of the wider social impact and the externalities. And also is used to make final decision whether project should be done or not. So in this instance, we are saying by assigning values to the costs and to the benefits, we are able to determine whether the project should be undertaken or should be forgone for the sake of, if a project's costs are outweighing the benefits, then there's no need for us to keep pursuing the project. We end up getting to the decision of forfeiting the project. So, and also we can say there's an absence of market signals to support whether the project can go ahead or not. We rely on the CBA. So the CBA actually assists us to come out with that decision. And also in those products where we are the expected benefits, we are most likely to experience market failure if we only consider that there is a benefit in this particular project without considering also the externalities in the negative side or on the side of the social costs. So the CBA actually leads us to a decisive position where we are able now to come out with a clear decision after weighing up the costs and the benefits of a particular project which is supposed to be undertaken. Right, that was question number 3.5. We move on to question number 4. Question number 4, it's saying, name two characteristics of public goods and services. Right, we understand the public goods and services. Number one, they are non-rivalry in consumption. What does this mean? When we are saying a product is non-rivalry, we are saying you don't have enemies in consumption. Consumption by one person does not reduce the amount of the product available to the next person. That's non-rivalry. Then, if you are looking at it from the other perspective, they are non-excludable. When we are looking at non-excludability, we are saying pairs cannot deny non-payers a chance to consume the goods. They are available to everyone who is wherever the good is. They cannot be a chance for one to exclude others from consuming, which means payers cannot deny non-payers a right to use the public goods. That is non-excludability. Then when we are looking at non-rejectable, we are saying no one can decline the consumption of public goods. For example, police protection. The police are there to protect everyone, whether you like or you are not, you don't like. It's their duty to do such. Or national defense is there to protect everyone. You cannot reject protection from the national army. They're non-rejectable. And also, they are infinite in consumption. Which means we can consume for as long as we are alive. Right. Those are some of the features. Now let's look at question number 4.1.2. Why does a monopoly make economic profit in the long run? Why does it make an economic profit in the long run? We understand that under perfect conditions, businesses can make economic profits in the short run. And then those profits are committed through new entries into the same industry. New businesses are going to join and they are going to result in increased quantities. And as a result, the price is going to go down until average cost is equal to average revenue. All businesses, they will break even. But for a monopolist, they keep on making profits even in the long run. Number one is it is because there is the only business. There's no competition there. There's only one business in that particular industry. The business revenue and cost curves are the market's revenue and cost curves. So at the same time, it means that business is going to keep on making profits in the long run because it's the only. Or we can also say other businesses are prevented from entry into the industry. They are prevented, and hence the business where if they were afforded the chance to join, they were going to compete the profits, and hence they were going to end it up on a zero profit point or a break-even point. But in this sake, we are saying the new businesses are prevented from entering so that the business which is already there in the industry keeps on making economic profits. Then number 4.2, it says, Competition Tribunal prohibits Vodacom massive merger. Right, let's look at the question. Identify the organization that can accept or reject mergers in South Africa. If you want to merge, you have to be, it has to be approved by the Competition Tribunal. So the Competition Tribunal, name the market structure that Vodacom operates. Vodacom operates in an oligopolistic market. Describe the term collusion. Right, collusion, we are saying businesses in the same industry engage each other to increase market share. By manipulating price and quantity. So we are saying business in the same industry, they come together so that they will find a way. They come together to do discussions so that they can increase their market share. How? By changing the price and the quantity. They play around with the price and quantity collectively so that they can be able to gain more revenue. That is collusion. What negative impact will the merger of Vodacom and Massive have on the competition in the market? What is it going to do on the competition on the market? Right. If the two are allowed to merge, what they're going to do, they will combine their resources. And hence making it difficult for others to compete with them. So it will be difficult for other businesses to compete with them because they will be having a competitive edge. After combining their resources, they will be having an advanced competitive edge compared to their counterparts. And hence it becomes a challenge for the ordinary businesses to now compete with them because of their size. Right. How does competition policy benefit the economy? Competition policy is there to protect consumers. Consumers are protected from unfair business practices and also from price fixing. And also it promotes efficient use of resources. Resources are used efficiently instead of wasteful use of resources. If you are having competition, the resources are going to be used effectively. It also makes the country's industry more competitive. If there's competition, we are saying the businesses they have a tendency of becoming innovative to find the best ways of production which lower the cost so that they can provide the product at the least cost and be able to maximize their revenue. So the competitive edge is upgraded when the businesses are exposed to competition. Right. Let's go to the next question, question 4.3. 4.3, it says, study the graph below and answer the questions. It's a PPC. Provide a suitable heading for the graph. I think I've already provided. It shows tablets versus laptops, which can be produced given the available resources. So for that sake, that diagram is illustrating for us the production possibility, curve or a frontier. Production possibility frontier or production possibility curve, the PPC. Identify the point where resources are not being used efficiently. If we produce at A, we have capacity to increase production of both tablets and laptops. So at point A is inefficient. Right. Explain how would a business be productive efficient? How would a business be productive efficient? Right. It can be productive efficient if it can be productive efficient in the sense that if a business average cost or before that, I have not answered question 4.33. Sorry for that. I have to answer 4.33 first. 4.33 says describe the term allocative. efficiency, allocative efficiency. We have productive efficiency and we have allocative efficiency. So when we're talking at allocative, we are saying, are we allocating our resources efficiently? By allocating, we are saying, are we using our resources to produce exactly what is demanded by the consumers? That is allocative efficiency. So we are saying, where available resources are used to produce the output that is most demanded. That is, when available resources are used to produce the output that is most demanded, that is allocative efficiency. We use our resources to produce what is actually demanded. Then it says, explain how would a business be productive inefficient. Inefficiency in terms of productivity, we are saying a business is failing to produce maximum output at the lowest possible cost. When a business is failing to produce maximum output at the lowest possible cost, so it means all businesses, for them to be efficient, they must produce at the lowest point of their average cost. They must try to minimize the cost of production per unit. They must produce at a point where the marginal cost is at its lowest. Like if you look at perfect competition, the businesses, they produce at a point where the average cost is at its lowest. But if you look at a monopoly, it produces at a point where the average cost is still falling, which means there is productive inefficiency. Right. Let's look at question 4.3.5. How would the production be affected if it took place at point B? Right. Let's look at point B. We are looking at a point there where we have 3 laptops and 5 tablets. That is point B. At point B, we are saying resources are being used efficiently. Because we are producing along the PPC. Any point along the PPC, it shows that there is efficiency in production. Then addressing the allocative part, allocatively we are saying this economy is having at point B producing 5 tablets and producing 3 laptops. That is what is demanded in terms of allocative efficiency. Right. That takes us to the next part. We're looking at question 4.4, and we also look at the question 4.5. Question 4.4 is closely related to the previous question. It's almost the same as what we have been addressing. Discuss the role of the Competition Commission. When we're looking at the Competition Commission, is there to ensure that it ensures that there is fair participation in economic activities. And also is there to be advised of measures and takeovers. They cannot happen without the approval of the Competition Commission. Is there to evaluate measures or Any issues with regard to competition? That's another duty regarding competition. Or can say measures cannot take place without consent of the commission. Right, that's basically the idea behind the competition commission. Right, the last question says, analyze the production levels and demand curve as characteristics of monopoly. Analyze the production levels and the demand curve as features of a monopoly. So we're looking at production level and demand curve. Right, we are going to look at it on a different page, that is page 4.5. Right, we're going to analyze the demand curve and also production levels. Right, I'm going to make use of the demand curve so that we can explain whatever we want to illustrate there. Right, unfortunately, my line is not very straight, my axis. Right. Right, then also indicate our demand curve. This is our marginal revenue. This is our average revenue, which is the demand curve. Right, somewhere like that. Then we can also look at it from the perspective of the marginal cost. And our marginal cost, remember, is equal to the supply curve. Right. So what is happening here with a monopoly? We want to analyze the demand curve. Right. If you look at the demand curve has got it's steep sloping. For a monopoly, it's steep sloping. Or in other terms, when you're looking at it, we are saying in terms of elasticity, it has inelastic demand. Where does the inelastic demand originate from? Remember, we're saying this monopolist is selling a unique product that does not have close substitute. So it means because of the nature of the product, it's unique. Consumers are faced with a challenge of finding close substitutes. So even if the monopolist increases the prices, consumers are still forced to buy the product because it does not have close substitutes. Then if you're looking at it from the perspective of the market versus the business, the demand curve is also the market demand curve. It's one and the same thing. So demand curve for business is equal to the demand curve for the industry. Why? Because that one business is the only business. So it's an industry on its own. As an individual business, it's also an industry on its own. And if you look at the demand curve, it's downward sloping. What is the implication? The monopolist can sell more by reducing price because it's downward sloping. Right. So let's look at it from the graph. If you look at this graph here, we are saying a monopolist produces here at equilibrium E. It produces quantity Q and charges price P. That's the output of the monopoly and the price. But this is inefficient if you are to look at it. What is going to happen? We are saying if it was a perfect market produces at a point where demand is equal to supply. The market forces determine the quantity. So this is an equilibrium for perfect markets, which produces quantity Q, C, and charges price PC. This is for a monopoly and for a monopoly. So if you check, the monopoly produces less quantity and charges a higher price. But if it was an efficient market, it was going to produce quantity Q, C, and charge the price PC. So we are looking at a monopoly here being productively inefficient. It is restricting quantity and charging a higher price. Because they know well that once they increase the quantity, they are supposed to sell their products at a lower price. They prefer producing less and charging a higher price than reducing the price and selling more. That is productive inefficiency. And if you also look at it from that perspective, we are saying the monopoly also is inefficient in terms of the production costs. The monopoly produces at a point where the average cost is still falling. If you are to add our average cost there, we are going to see that our average cost is going to appear like that. Though it's not going to be precise, we are saying our average cost, let's say, is like that. This is our average cost. If we check the point of production that is being followed by the monopoly is somewhere here in terms of the average cost. They are producing at a point where the average cost is still falling, which means they have got capacity to increase their production and get to a point of production where the costs are at their lowest point, like as suggested by the quantity being produced by a perfectly competitive market. So we are seeing that in this instance, there is a case of productive inefficiency whereby the monopolist is producing at a point which is inefficient. So in terms of quantity produced, we are saying the monopolist is inefficient in terms of producing the right quantities. They produce less and charge a price which is higher. Right. Let's go on to the next part. That was question number 4.5, which wanted us to analyze the demand curve of a monopolist and also the production. We move on now to section C, which is our essay section. Right, we're going to highlight on what you must address in the essay question. We are not much worried about the introduction. You know how to introduce an essay. You are supposed to start with defining the key aspect in the question. And also when you are concluding, you tie up your argument using a higher order response, which shows understanding or which shows interpretation of what you were discussing in the essay. But question number 5 is saying, with the aid of graphs, discuss the short run and long run equilibrium positions or economic profit, economic loss, and normal profit in a perfect market. Discuss the short run equilibrium positions. This is for a perfect market. Right. So what I'm going to do here, we are using graphs, and I'm going to draw the graphs for economic profit, economic loss, and for normal profit. Then I'm going to explain the graphs. Right. So this is question number 5, the main part. Right. This is our main part for question number 5. What are we supposed to do there? We're supposed to illustrate the equilibrium position. This is a perfect market, remember. And we are supposed to use graphs. So I'm going to draw the 3 graphs and explain them for the sake of clarity and for the sake of understanding. I'm going to start with an economic profit position in the short run. Right, we have our vertical axis, which is our price axis or cost and revenue, and we have our quantity on the horizontal axis. Right, this is our price and this is our quantity. Right, drawing our graphs, we want to show economic profit. We are saying the perfectly competitive business charges a price that is determined by the market force of demand and supply, and they are faced with a horizontal demand curve, or what we call a perfectly elastic demand curve. Demand curve is the same as our average revenue. What is going to happen to our average cost? For us to make economic profits, our average cost must drop below the level of the average revenue. This is the shape of our average cost. And always remember that our marginal cost is going to cut our average revenue. Our average marginal cost is going to cut the average cost at its lowest point. So we are saying the marginal cost is going to come and is going to cut, assuming that is the lowest point, though not precise. Our marginal cost comes there. And where is our equilibrium? Our equilibrium is at the point. Remember also, for a perfect market, the average revenue is also the same as marginal revenue, which is equal to price. So for a horizontal demand curve or a perfectly elastic demand curve, you are saying the price is equal to the demand curve, is equal to the average cost, average revenue is also equal to the marginal revenue. So all those four variables, they lie on the same horizontal axis. The price, the demand, the average revenue, and the marginal revenue, they are all along the horizontal axis. So our equilibrium, remember, we find our equilibrium where our marginal cost is equal to our marginal revenue. Or else we are saying our marginal cost is the supply curve, which is equal to the demand curve. That is a perfect market. So where are they meeting? They are meeting here. This is where we find our equilibrium point. And then that is where we determine our quantity to be produced. And what is the level of our cost? Our average cost is going like this. Our cost, we pick it from there, this particular point. So this is our average cost. So we are seeing that here our average revenue is above our average cost, which means this area is an area of economic profit. So in your explanation, we are trying to justify the equilibrium point in the short run for an economic profit making perfect market business. They make supernormal profits because average revenue is above average cost, and hence economic profits as indicated by the shaded region there, that is a region of economic profit. Right, then we go on to an equilibrium point in the short run where the business makes an economic loss. Right, for a business to make a loss, it means the costs will be above the revenue. The total cost will be above total revenue, or the average cost will be above average revenue. Right, this is our vertical axis, and this is our horizontal axis. Our quantity is here, and our price is on the vertical axis. Right, for a loss making, we are saying our price must be below the costs or average revenue. So this is our average revenue, which is equal to the demand curve, which is also equal to the marginal revenue. And our cost curve, our average cost, must stay on top. It must not intercept the average revenue curve if it's an economic loss. And then remember, our marginal cost is always going to cut our average cost at its lowest point. We get our marginal cost like that. Where is our equilibrium? Our equilibrium is where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue, which is the same as our supply is equal to the demand, which means our equilibrium, we find it here. And then that is the point that determines for us the quantity that is going to be produced and the costs of those units of production. We'll get it from the average cost. So our average cost, you see, is there. So for the sake of this, we are saying our average cost is above our average revenue. So this area is indicating an economic loss. How are we realizing the loss? It's because our average cost is above average revenue and hence economic loss. That is how we illustrate. Then moving on to the graph of a normal profit position, which is a break-even point. Normal profit equilibrium. Right. We draw the same axis. We draw a vertical axis to show our revenue and cost and the price like this. And we draw our horizontal axis to represent for us the quantity that is being produced and sold. So our price comes this side and our quantity is there. Right. What is going to happen? Our price remains perfectly elastic, which is equivalent to the average revenue and the demand curve, and also equivalent to the marginal revenue. Our average cost now must come to a point of tangency with the average revenue. And at this particular point, that is our tangential point, that is where our marginal cost is also going to cut through the average cost. This is our marginal cost. So what are we saying? We are saying our equilibrium, we still find it where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue, which is this particular point. That is where we get our quantity, which is going to be produced and sold. So why are we saying this is a normal profit point? We are saying average revenue is equal to average cost is equal to the price is equal to demand is equal to marginal revenue is equal to 0, which is normal profit. All these variables, they are falling at that particular point. Our average revenue is equal to average cost, and at the same point is equal to the price, is equal to the marginal revenue, is equal to the demand curve, is equal to 0. As suggested, the 0, there is no point which is shaded there, which means the average cost is equal to the average revenue at the market clearing price. That's basically how we illustrate those equilibrium points. Let's do the additional part. Analyze the relationship between individual businesses and the industry under perfect markets. The relationship between businesses and the industry under perfect market conditions. Right, that is also a question of concern in relation to what we were addressing. Right. So I'll also try to use a graph so that we understand that quickly. Right. So the relationship between these two variables is like that. This is additional. I'm using a graph to make it much faster to understand and to make it maybe clearer for some of you who understand to interpret graphs better than to interpret what is written in the text. Right. We are going to compare the two, the industry on one side and the firm on the other side. Right. So what happens here, we're going to draw two graphs which are adjacent to each other. Right. The first graph is for the industry. I'll try to be precise. Right. First axis, and then we're going to draw the second axis here. All right. Not very accurate. Try to be accurate so that my explanation comes out clear. Right. These two graphs. Right, on the vertical axis is the price, on the vertical axis is the quantity on the horizontal and quantity on the horizontal. Right, we are saying the industry has got the interplay of the market forces of demand and supply, giving us an equilibrium there. And this is the quantity for the market, and this is the price for the market. For the industry, rather, the whole industry is affected by the interplay of the forces of demand and supply. We are saying these businesses here, they are price takers. They don't have the market power to determine the price. So they are supposed now to accept the price from the industry. This is now an individual firm. It now takes that price. What is going to happen? It means they are supposed to sell an infinite quantity at that ruling market price. So we see they have a horizontal demand curve. And for that sake, we are saying this business here is unable to manipulate the price. They can sell infinite quantities, meaning to say if they get fewer customers, they can sell Q. If they get relatively more customers, they can sell Q1. If they get most customers, they can sell Q2, which is unending numbers of products, but at the same market price. What you must note also is any price above P, if they try to charge P1, revenue becomes 0. If they try to reduce price to P2, again, revenue will be equal to 0. Any price above or below the ruling market price is going to lead to a 0 revenue. That's basically how the businesses demand curve are determined. And for the sake of clarity again, our demand curve here, like what we've been mentioning, is also equivalent to our marginal revenue and also our average revenue, which means these businesses, whenever they are charging a price, the price that they charge is equivalent to the marginal revenue that they are going to get. What is the sense? If they are selling a product for 10 Rand and they want to sell an additional product, they are supposed to still sell it at the same price, at 10 Rand. What is the marginal revenue? They have gained an extra 10 Rand and the price is not changing, is still 10 Rand. So the marginal revenue for a perfectly competitive market is the same as its average revenue, is the same as its price, and is the same as its demand curve. That is the idea behind our question here. Then you're supposed to find a high order conclusion to tie up your conclusion. Right. Then question number 6, it says, discuss in detail without using graphs state intervention as a consequence of market failures. Right. How does the state intervene in the production of goods and services or in the working of the market? Right, we're going to deal with that. Then the additional part is saying, how will immobility of factors of production lead to market failure? That's the additional part. Right, let us address the first part, question number 6, main part. Right, this is question 6. It's question 6, the main part. We are going to look at the different ways through which the government intervenes. Our question does not require us to use graphs, but where there's need, I will just illustrate for the sake of understanding and clarity. The government intervenes through minimum wages. Right, what are we saying here? A minimum wage is the least amount of money that is supposed to be paid by law. The government sets a minimum wage which is supposed to be paid by law. And this minimum wage is set above the equilibrium wage. They feel like the equilibrium wage is too low, and hence they want to improve the living standards of people. The market is setting a price which is a wage which is low. So the government seeks to establish an improvement in the standard of life of people. And hence they set up a price which is relatively higher so that people get a higher income and be able to improve their life standards. And as a result, it is also going to cause unemployment because now there's a disequilibrium in the market forces. Unemployment is going to be realized. Why? Because the wage rate is now higher. The employers, they tend to reduce the wage bill by cutting on the size of the workforce. That is a minimum wage. Then we also look at the other way of intervention is the minimum price. Right, the minimum price, you are saying the government sets the price, which is also called the price floor. The minimum price is actually there to ensure the supply of essentials. Supply of agric essentials in most instances. Agricultural essentials. And also is there to uplift the welfare of the farmer. Or farmers and farm workers. Because remember, agricultural products are affected by the shocks, either climatic shocks. When there is a bumper harvest, prices of agricultural products, they tend to go very low. So there's need for the government to set a minimum price to protect the income of the farmer and also the welfare of the workers. And hence, also ensuring the efficient supply of those products, such that the farmer will keep on producing the products because they are reaping a benefit from their production. So these products here, these are minimum price. They are set above the equilibrium price. So that the farmer gets a higher income. But as a result, it also causes a market disequilibrium whereby the supply now will outweigh the demand. So they will be having excess supply, which is going to give a cost to the farmer in terms of storage. Right. Then number 3, another way of intervention by the government, we look at also the maximum prices. Right. The maximum price is also called the price ceiling. It is set above equilibrium price, set below the equilibrium price. Equilibrium price. Why is it set there? It's mainly set for essentials. And hence to ensure affordability of essential basics commodities, so that they are readily available at a reasonable price to the consumers. What is going to happen? This is a set price which is below the minimum, the equilibrium ruling price. It is going to cause a disequilibrium on the market. Why? Because the price is now low, is going to outweigh the supply, which means the government has to intervene in producing those products or in incentivizing the supplier so that there is a market tendency of balance. As a result, demand outweighs supply. There's going to be a shortage on the market. That is the negative implication. People are going to demand more than what is supplied because the price is now lower, and hence there is going to be the issue of shortages on the market. Then if you also look at 4, we look at redistribution of wealth. The government intervenes through redistribution means of wealth. How does the government try to redistribute? We look at a progressive tax system in South Africa, where low income earners they pay less and high income earners they pay more as a way of redistributing income. Then if you look at it again from the side of redistribution, we also look at free basic services for the poor and marginalized communities. For example, free basic health care, free basic education. Those are provided. And also, if you look at the grants, the transfer payments, it's also a way of trying to redistribute income by paying to those who are disadvantaged. And also, if you look at the issue of the broad-based Black economic empowerment, they are trying to redistribute income through those means. The broad-based Black economic empowerment, right? And also, look at other measures like land redistribution and land restitution. Those are measures to address the injustices of the past and also to try and redistribute income amongst the South African community. Then you can also look at other measures like government production, involvement in production. We look at the state-owned enterprises that try to produce basic commodities at reasonable prices so that they are affordable. We look at public and merit goods being produced by the state so that they uplift the welfare of the people. We look at collective goods by the government through municipalities. For example, refuse removal is the state's intervention to try and ensure that there is equality in the market. Right. And also, if you look at the government regulation of the imperfect markets, the government also regulates the imperfect markets so that there is efficiency in the market. You look at the competition policies which are put in place to ensure that the consumer is not exploited. Or if you look at it from the side of collusion, they have restrict those collusive measures by businesses to try and gain through exploiting the consumers. Right. That is basically the picture of what you must address if you are looking at it from the side of the government intervention. Other things that you can also talk of, you can look at the government's direct control through legislation. The government also regulates directly through legislation, for example, laws concerning the consumption of products which are prohibited at a given age. For example, prohibition of alcohol and cigarettes to persons who are below the age of 18. Right, all those things. That's part of government intervention. Let's look at our last question, our additional part. What does it say? How will immobility of factors of production lead to market failure? We are looking at immobility of factors of production. That is our additional part. Factor immobility in relation to market failure. How does factor immobility lead to market failure? Right, when we're looking at factor immobility, we are saying our factors of production, they are immobile. They cannot be easily moved. And for that sake, how does that contribute to the failure of the working of the market? The fact that the factors cannot effectively move, it also results in the failure of the market. So let's look at it from the open perspective of the question. We are saying factors of production are not easily movable. e.g. capital and machinery. That are fixed. For that sake, it means it's a challenge. We are going to end up having a market failure because the factors cannot effectively move. For example, machinery. We have machinery which is heavy duty machinery for heavy industrial activities. Those machines cannot be effectively moved. Once they are mounted there. So it means also in the event, for example, we are using bulky raw materials in that particular industry. And those raw materials now are getting exhausted in a given area. Like, for example, we are looking at coal-powered power stations. If those coal-fired power stations are located close to the coal mines and the coal is running out, is being depleted, it means we have to move the plant of power generation to a new area where we have access to coal reserves at a lower cost. But at the end of the day, you tend to find that the capital, the machinery, is not easily movable. We cannot easily move it. We cannot easily dismantle and relocate it. We will end up having to opt to transport the coal from far away places at a now higher cost. That is going to cause a market failure in the sense that the end product is going to get to be sold at a higher price because we are now engaging in extra transportation cost of the raw material. Why? Because we failed to move the plant. That is a market failure. Right. If we look at it also, government restrictions. Government restricts movement of labor. Especially between countries. It is sometimes difficult for people to move, and hence it causes market failure. We have skilled people who are supposed to perform specific tasks, but because of restrictions of the government in terms of labor controls, they cannot move. Or because of the requirements. For example, the requirements like work permits and for foreign nationals, and also some other certificate on qualification requirements in a specific profession which are required. It will limit the mobility of labor. And as a result, we tend to find that we lack a skill which is supposed to enhance productivity or which is supposed to lower the cost of production. Why? Because the labor which is there is actually not very suited to the production, but there is labor which is more suitable on another side. But because labor is being restricted to move from one profession to another, then it also contributes to the failure of the markets. And also, if you look at factors of production, they're not identical. Right. If you look at factors of production, they are not identical. The situation in some other countries, you tend to find that if, for example, land is more productive in one country for producing a specific product, for farm product, but is less suitable to produce that specific product or that specific crop in another country. And for that sake, we are saying there is going to be inefficiency in the sense that our factors are not identical. They are not exactly the same. So it means that is going to give a disparity on the working of the market. Or we can say one factor of production are not available in some other countries. Not all factors are available in all the countries. Some factors are not available in other countries. For example, mainly the natural resources. So that is going also to give a disadvantage on the working of the market, and that is going to affect on the working of the market. Right. And also, if you look at markets, do not adjust rapidly to changes in supply and demand. They fail. Most markets fail to adjust rapidly to changes in market signals. The market also fails to adjust rapidly to changes in market supply and demand. If there are changes in the dynamics of the markets, the factors cannot adjust quickly. Like, for example, there is a change in the demand for a specific product. The demand for a specific product has just risen. And then we need to address that increase in demand. It means we have to adjust our production factors to suit the supply of that particular product. And hence we see that sometimes even labor is not mobile. If we need now, our economy is more biased towards agriculture. It means we have more workers who specialize in the field of agriculture. But what if the economy changes? Now we are now focusing on manufacturing. Can the same farmer become a factory worker? They don't have the skill. They need to go to school to learn how to operate machines. That is going to take time because labor is not perfectly mobile. You cannot turn into different professions overnight. You cannot be a teacher today and turn to become a doctor tomorrow. That is not possible. So labor is also immobile in that dimension, which means we fail to adjust to the market dynamics, leading to market failure. You tend to find that if there's an increase in the demand of a specific product and the factors are failing to adjust towards the production of that factor, of that product, then it means that is going to cause an irregularity on the market, which is going to cause an increase in the price of the market, which is now a failure of the market. And also the fact that there's going to be a shortage on the market, that is also an indication of the failure of the factors of production to adjust. So basically that is the issue of factor immobility in relation to how it leads to failure of the working of the market as in the total. Right. So basically those are the ideas that we need to look at, and if there are any other ideas, you can also add them to that. And with that being said and done, that was the mark of the end of section C, which was question number 6. And therefore it means that takes us to the end of the discussion of our paper 2 for economics, grade 12. So with that being said and done, I think this discussion, it is my hope, or it is my greatest hope that this discussion is going to assist you and is going to take you through your preparations for your economics paper 2. And for that sake, it is also my hope that the elaborations are going to assist you in figuring out sense. If the question comes differently, you are supposed to adjust and also use the knowledge to adjust to the given question. Given that now the information is at the disposal of your fingertips, you can now be able to manipulate what you know to suit what is required in the given question. So that marks the end of our discussion. We'll meet again in other discussions. Your host in economics. Thank you for watching.
Welcome to Thundereduc, an online learning platform powered by professional, highly skilled and qualified educators.
We deliver structured CAPS aligned lessons for high school subjects including mathematics, physical sciences, life sciences, geography, business studies, history, accounting, English, Afrikaans, and others.
For the intermediate and senior phases, we offer expert teaching in natural sciences, mathematics, social sciences, English, and EMS, designed to build strong academic foundations.
Access the distinction material books by clicking join button on our YouTube channel or download Thundereduc app on Google Play Store for all our study material and past exam papers.
Thundereduc offers extra classes for rewrites, old curriculum, and other students from grade 4 to grade 12 through online and physical classes.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel Thundereduc for reliable curriculum-focused learning and stay updated with the latest educational content.
Please like, share, and turn on notifications so you never miss a lesson.
Visit us at www.thundereduc.com
or call 0786 636 613 or 084 833 1738 for more details.
Thundereduc, we focus on quality.